Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee for June. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Apologies from Andrew Gray, who's Ellicott is sitting as substitute, and Ethan Stacey and Susan Warren are sitting as substitute.
Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest or lobbying of members or unaccompanied site visits? No, thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of May have been circulated. May I take them as a true record, please? Seconded. All in favour? Any against? Thank you. Any matters arising from page 1 or page 2? It was a succinct meeting. Right, item 4, public speaking. I have been advised that we have 3 members of the public who wish to speak today, all on item 5.1, so I will call those public speakers at that item, which we will now move straight onto. So item 5.1 is application 643-24001, proposed change of use of barn, known as North Barn, ancillary use to holiday accommodation at Middleborough Borough, Timberscombe. This is going to be presented by Mr. White.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as the Chairman has said, this is it's actually a retrospective planning application for the change of use of a building to a unit of self-catering holiday accommodation. The site lies at Middleborough, which is in the hamlet of Borough, and that lies to the south of Woolton Courtney. That's a closer detail plan picking up the hamlet. Obviously the application site is in red, with the building itself just where the cursor is on the screen. In terms of aerial photograph, the subject building is referred to as Unit 6. It's that building here where the cursor is again on the screen there. It lies next to a large building which is known as North Barn. That's that building just here. The upper barn, which is a building referred to in the committee papers, lies to the south at the bottom of the slide, as you can see on the cursor there. That building itself has been converted to residential use, with an oxy condition which restricts the use of the building and the accommodation within the building as a holiday use and ancillary use to the main dwelling. The dwelling house is a large attached dwelling that lies to the southeast side, just on this side, as you can see with the cursor, and there's obviously an internal yard area between the building group. The main dwelling has historically been used for bed and breakfast, with some letting rooms also provided within the North Barn on the opposite side of the yard. The central yard area does provide parking and turning space, and the access into the site is just to the top of the dwelling house here off of Borough Lane. That's the proposal plans. You've got the floor plan at the top, very small on the screen, but it's a single bedroom unit with living accommodation in quite a linear layout. On some photographs, so that's roughly the southeast elevation of the unit, Unit 6, the accommodation looking into the courtyard. That's Unit 6 on the top photograph there is just to the left, with North Barn in the background there, with the main dwelling to the right hand side of the photograph. The lower photograph is picking up mainly the North Barn, as you can see here, with the vehicles parked in front of it, with Unit 6, the lower section of roof to the left hand side. That's now looking, the left hand photograph is looking sort of roughly south across the courtyard to the upper barn in the backdrop here. Unit 6 is that lower section of roof just along there, and this is the North Barn in here. And the bottom photograph there is from Borough Lane into the access of the site, and you can see again North Barn in the sort of the backdrop. And that's the view either direction along the road. So the top photograph is towards what would be Timberscombe, and the bottom photograph again along Barrow Lane in the direction of Woolton Courtney. Chairman, the report considers the main issues, and members will see that even though there are local accounts of accidents along Barrow Lane, the Highway Authority considers that, subject to conditions, the highway access is acceptable, and officers are satisfied that the proposal would not have an unacceptable impact on highway safety. Moreover, there would be no unacceptable impact on neighbouring occupiers' living conditions. Nevertheless, as a matter of principle, the proposal was not supported by policy RTD4 of the local plan, which is the main applicable policy in this case, given that it relates to non-service accommodation. And that policy, for members' benefit, is included on this slide before us here. Clause 1 of the policy provides a list of circumstances where non-service accommodation would be permitted. The agent for the application agrees that A to C of that list does not apply in this case. However, the agent contends that clause 1D would be applicable as a proposal for the diversification of a rural land-based business. Notwithstanding that, the local plan is clear in terms of what is meant by rural land-based business, and that is also set out on the slide, with the local plan glossary shown at the bottom hand side in particular. And whilst there is some land associated with Middleborough, it is not a land-based business, and it does not in itself provide at least full-time employment for at least one member of staff. Accordingly, the proposal fails to meet the requirements of RTD4 and so conflicts with this policy of the local plan. Chairman, as members know, the starting point for any planning decision is section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004, which requires decisions to be made in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Whilst the applicant considers the proposal would comply with RTD4 as a diversification of a rural land-based business, the application property does not meet the definition of this within the local plan. The proposal is therefore contrary to policy RTD4. In terms of other material planning considerations, there would be some benefits associated with the proposal, including contributing towards the local economy and business use of the site. Nevertheless, those benefits would be limited by the scale of the proposal and will not outweigh the conflict with the local plan. The local plan imposes limitations on the provision of hollow lets and instead provides more flexible or favourable support for the use of buildings for local need affordable accommodation, extended family dwellings or other business use, as such buildings are a limited resource. Therefore, officers conclude that the proposal will be contrary to the development plan, and there are no material considerations indicating that the harm or that outweigh the finding that the proposal is contrary to the policy. Accordingly, the recommendation on page 11 of the agenda papers is that planning permission be refused for the reason given. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. White. So we'll now come to our public speakers, the first of whom is Mr. Bilson. Mr. Bilson, if you'd come to the microphone, please. I understand that you're experiencing some vocal problems at the moment, and having that understood, there is a degree of chairman's discretion anyway, which I would grant to any speaker, but understanding you're facing particular difficulties at the moment, I will exercise my discretion, but hope that you can finish as near as possibly to the 2 minutes allowed.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have one page and I'll stick to it. Well, press the button, or is that working?
No, it's not working.
Sorry?
It's on.
So, I live at Borough Farm, directly opposite Middleborough. Proposal is clearly in conflict with policy RTD4 and can be refused permission for that reason alone, as recommended by Mr. White, but not, I suggest, only for that reason. I bought Borough Farm in 2007 as a retirement home. At that time, Middleborough was a retirement home for a Major General and his wife, who was retired, with the wife's mother, who lived in Upper Barn, which has now been mentioned. When Middleborough was sold about 10 years ago, the new owners appeared to have different plans. Soon after their purchase, 3 bed and breakfast suites were created. That's more than most authorities would allow ancillary accommodation, typical of Limiters 2. In 2021 and 22, conversion works were carried out to an attached part of the same building to create a self-contained unit absorbing one of the 3 B&B suites. Having achieved that, the owners last year spent a large part of the year marketing the property as a holiday complex, promoting the idea of further development. The property was then withdrawn from the market. A few weeks ago, the property was remarketed and is again being described as a holiday complex, with unit number 6 now described as a guest suite, but retaining all the facilities of a self-contained unit. Excuse me. In his report, Mr. White states that the proposal complies with policy CES6 that relates to conditions of neighbours. He says that the proposal will not cause material harm, but with respect, how can you make that judgment having never visited Borough Farm? Our patio, access from our French doors and the kitchen, is just 15 metres from their entrance. That's less than this room. It's not just traffic movements coming in and out. It's every time someone comes in and stops, we have to listen to all their meeting and greeting conversations about their journeys. And then there's the delivery vehicles with food. It may only be one extra unit, but it's the cumulative effect of 4 holiday units altogether. In my opinion, the proposal fails to satisfy policy CES6 and should be given a second reason for refusal. Borough Lane is very narrow. It is accepted that the Higher Authority can only advise based on public records, but there have been numerous unrecorded accidents, some quite serious and some quite recent, very close by. Witness statements from those actually involved in 3 of those accidents have recently been uploaded onto the website. Again, it is a cumulative effect.
Mr.
If this
Bilson.
application is approved, it will be very difficult to resist further development, and is the cumulative impact on our amenity and local traffic network that will survive. In my opinion, Liverpool Borough should remain as a home and not become a business.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bilson, very much. Thank you. And our next speaker is Mrs. Giblett, the applicant. Our next speaker is going to be Mr. Giblett, the applicant.
I couldn't read it fast enough, sorry.
So can I just be quite clear, Mr. Giblett, are you reading 2 statements on behalf of yourself and?
Just the one.
Just the one on behalf of the 2 of you?
Joint statement.
Okay, fine, thank you. Well, as I said earlier, there's normally 2 minutes when you start to speak, but in the circumstances, discretion, particularly as you're speaking on behalf of both of you, means that you can be allowed a little extra if necessary.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, we'd like to apologise for this being a retrospective application. We have run a holiday business from Middleborough since 2016, having converted parts of North Barn into 3 ensuite guest bedrooms. We carried out the works on Unit 6 in the belief that we had planning as part of a previous approval for a total of 8 units. And the evidence we hold, which includes a sworn declaration from the previous owner, Mrs. Margaret Barron, served to assure 2 serving Exmoor Park officers that we were not in breach, subsequently confirmed in writing by the National Park in August 2023. On November the 30th, this decision was reversed, and during succeeding meetings, we were verbally advised by the same 2 serving officers on separate occasions that a retrospective application for the 1 single unit would be supported as it was within policy. At Middleborough, we have always endeavoured to manage the land in such a way as to conserve the National Park's special qualities. We graze horses and intermittently sheep to secure the quality of the land. We preserve our hedgerows and maintain water sources for the wildlife, particularly the bird life, which is so abundant. The gardens and land are a major draw for our guests who come to us for walking, tranquility and the beauty of Exmoor. Our guests are encouraged to use all areas of our land for their recreation and are able to directly access a bridleway, avoiding the use of roads. We offer visits to our horses and spend a great deal of time engaging visitors and encouraging an understanding of rural life in the National Park. Whilst we do not fit the definition of a working farm, the land is a major part of our success as a tourist destination and demonstrates a very clear use of land and premises in support of tourism opportunities. The holiday business has a 5-star rating, turns a healthy profit and provides full-time work for my wife Jo and part-time work for local persons. We believe this mixed use of the land does provide a diversification for a rural land-based business clearly aligned with the National Park Zone definition, fulfilling the criteria under local policy RTD4. Guests visits us because they want to enjoy the amazing area, and our land-based business allows them to experience a greater understanding of Exmoor life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gibbett. Can I thank the public speakers? And we'll now move to the member debate. Members. Mrs. Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have thought about this particular application long and hard. I looked at the documents on the planning website. The public speakers have explained what happened about the first item, which is on that, which is saying there has been no breach. I looked to, since there was then a retrospective planning application, I looked to see if there was the retraction of that, which there wasn't, but that's been explained, so that's now clear. I spent quite a time looking at the policies which support the making of livings on the moor and business development. And I looked also at the question of roads. The roads on Exmoor are always difficult, and people always drive too fast. I was interested in the Highway Authority's advice and entirely persuaded by the report on that subject. Again, there is something about do people make a living on the moor or with the roads that we have, or do they not? Then I turned to the business use and looked at policy SES 3. And it seemed to me that the first two paragraphs of that policy, which talk about the reuse of buildings in farmsteads or hamlets, this is clearly a farmstead, and that seemed to be entirely in accord with what this application is for, albeit it's a retrospective application. However, there is the more detailed DT, whatever it is for, policy, which refines very much what is said about business development and comes to the very specific non-serviced accommodation. Other sorts of business development would not be caught by this. However, there are policy questions which I think we should explore when the policies are revised, because the policy about business is about making businesses on the moor is about making sure people can make their living, and farmers and others. The conservation of the special qualities of the national park depend upon all residents, not just one subsection. However, in the meantime, the policy as written in the more detailed and specific one does militate against this application. Therefore, I am not minded to propose its approval, which before we came to think about it today, I would have been wishing to do. That's as far as I'd like to go.
Right, thank you, Mrs. Nicholson. So basically you're saying the plan is constraining in this particular case.
The plan is very constraining, and we know that the plan is a guide. It is not something which we must obey. It is policy and plan, but we have to find persuasive material considerations to allow us to step outside it, and I have so far not been able to develop those.
Indeed. Okay. So I think that's clear and helpful. Thank you. Does any other member wish to comment, please? Dr. Kelly.
Let's wait for others. I take the point. Councillor Nicholson's made some very good points there in terms of policy ES3, business development, but that's looking really at employment and other businesses. It's not so specific in terms of RTD4, which is the one before us. I see the only reason this application has come to committee is the Parish Council response, and the Parish Council response fails to mention any policies, and it doesn't mention RTD4, which is unfortunate. It actually says, in terms of precedent, to allow further holiday units could have a severe impact on neighbouring properties, so it rather argues against itself by saying, well, if we do allow one, we don't want any more. So I take the point about the impact on amenity, but trying to look at it objectively and taking the policy, the relevant policy, on its in its stated meaning, I cannot identify why this proposal conflicts with that policy. Sorry, is consistent with the policy. There is a conflict. It's contrary to 1A, B, C, and D. And I cannot identify any material considerations that suggest that we arrive at any other decision. So, unfortunately, from the point of view of the applicant, I would have to say there is a clear conflict. I think the officer recommendation is correct, and I would move that we go with the officer recommendation of refusal.
Right, thank you, Dr. Kelly. Is that seconded? Dr. Warren, do you want to say anything at this stage?
I don't think I have anything to add to what. I don't think I have anything to add to what Dr. Kelly just said. So yeah, I'm happy to support his proposal.
Right, thank you. Any other member comment at this moment? I might ask Mr. White actually to come back a moment. Mrs. Lawrence.
Yes. Strangely, I drove down Borough Lane on Friday afternoon when there was a traffic problem in Timberscombe, a serious flooding. And whilst it was a busy lane, it coped extremely well. And everybody drove appropriately, and everybody got to where they wanted to go, despite the huge amount of water that was running down from Timberscombe. So I know that in a situation that road can cope well, although it is a narrow lane. And I don't find it difficult to accept that any development should not progress in similar situations to this. I can quite appreciate why, when you start a business, you never quite know which direction it's going. This seems to have gone extremely well, and I would be more than happy to not support the recommendation, because I do believe that this development could easily go forward and not really bear any significant change to the area.
Thank you very much, and of course you can vote against the proposal.
Yes, I vote against
I think the point you're making about highways is quite clear on page 4, that the highway authorities is of the view that proposed development will not give rise to any unacceptable highway safety impact, or that the residual cumulative effects on the local highway network would be severe. So I think that to that degree there is some, if not exactly highway support, but at least no negative comment. The issue, however, remains that of policy and RTD4, which officers advise us is pretty much inescapable. However, Mr. White, do you want to say anything at this moment? No? Do any other members wish to speak? Dr. Kelly?
Just the one point I'd make. I wasn't suggesting we refuse it for any other reason than conflict of the policy.
I think that's the only ground on which really we can take a decision. Right, I don't see any other members wishing to speak. So it has been moved by Dr. Kelly and seconded by Dr. Warren that the officer's recommendation of refusal is accepted. May I see all those in favour of that refusal? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Those against? And those abstaining? Okay, thank you. So that is refused for the reasons stated, which is absolutely policy RDD4 on the local plan serviced accommodation policy, non-serviced accommodation policy. Right, thank you ladies and gentlemen for that. I don't know if the members of the public want to take the opportunity to leave.
Yes, we'll leave you to it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 6 is application decisions delegated to the Chief Executive, and we have 2 pages of them on this particular occasion. I'll just go through them page by page, I think. Anything on page 1 that anybody wishes to raise? Mr. White, do shout if you want to.
No, sorry, thank you.
Draw anything to our attention? Anything on page 1? Nothing about the refusals or the withdrawals? Oh, one from the bottom. Yeah. Land at North Common Wood, south of A39, or... And one from the top, please. Yes, all right. Yeah. 2 from the top, 2 from the bottom.
2 from the... Both at the top, sorry. So the first one, High Court Farm. Is that what we want to talk about?
No, it's of course.
Okay, big pun. I took it as 2, as in 1, 2. I've got it, Stephen, sorry. Both telecoms apps, prior approvals, both refused. The one at the bottom one, Land at North Common Wood, which is just west of Lillicombe, is in some dispute at the moment, and we're trying to encourage an alternative site which would be better. So hopefully we'll have some success there.
Okay.
And the top one, sorry, the Linton one.
So that one's, as it stands, is just a refusal. We haven't heard further from them yet. So.
All right. Mrs. Nicholson.
Just to say, you've just said that one's a refusal. That means they would have to apply,
Yeah.
not that it's not possible. Is that right? Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, so they have to go through the full application.
They'd have to reapply if they're going for an alternative siting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't understand. When prior approval is refused, are you saying an application is refused, or if you want to do it, you've got to put in an application? Which one?
So essentially, it's refused.
Right.
They want to, if we can find an alternative site, it would still require a fresh application.
Yes. Okay, but they can't. It's not like saying
you don't move to a planning application. No.
No.
Whereas the one at the bottom is prior approval not required. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense, but I'll discover it later. Because if prior approval is not required, then they should get on with it.
Yes.
If prior approval is required, it suggests they can make an application.
Yes,
but Joe is saying no, they can't.
No, because in these 2 instances, the prior approval is refused.
Yeah, so they've got to make an application rather than having, you know.
They're slightly different applications under the
Yeah.
General Solicitor's Own Order. One relates to agriculture, one relates to telecoms, and the process is slightly different between the 2.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Now I understand.
It might be helpful if we had a bit of planning training on it, actually, at some stage. Mark that one down. Prior approval. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, on just on page 1 at the very bottom,
Yeah.
is this the site that we had a previous retrospective application on under a different ownership?
We might need notice of that question.
Okay, I think it was.
We'll find out and let you know.
Thank you.
Page 2.
Yeah, Chair, the second item, 6/2024-001, only in light of what we've just discussed with the previous applicant, and again, if we're going to see more of these conversions of farms and outbuildings to holiday accommodation, it would be good to perhaps just clarify in our minds why that one was approved without problem and the previous one we've just discussed was not, and did that rest on a different circumstances for R2D4?
Presumably this is an agricultural diversification, which is allowed for.
Yes. And again,
That is the reason.
For the sake of clarifying, particularly if anybody is interested in reading our minutes or watching our meeting, that
is the difference.
So what I'm trying to say is, for sure, in the national park, we don't forbid the conversion of farms into holiday accommodation, but you need to satisfy R2D4, which means an understanding of what we mean by land-based rural business.
Yeah.
Correct. Good.
Okay. Interesting to see item 4 on page 2, the old vicarage at Simmonsbath, which many of you will remember we went on a site visit to have a look at the location of a private equestrian sand school, and I see that has now been approved with conditions.
How long did it take?
It took the time it needed to take, I suppose, Mrs. Nicholson.
Well, we have been asked about this one on a number of occasions.
We have.
Presumably, Chair, that was a different location.
Well, within the overall site, yes.
Yes.
Yes, close to the dwelling, isn't it? I mean, the pre-app, before the application, happened quite some time ago, but it was a while before they submit the planning application. I'm not quite sure why it took so long to make the application, but it got there.
Right, anything else on page 2? No, thank you. If not, item 7, site visits, should there be the requirement for any, will be Friday the 28th of June in the morning. I haven't been advised of any other business of urgency, so I will therefore declare the committee at an end.